Welcome back to another Facebook edition. It's feeling very unusual. I haven't done a Facebook Live in a while. And today I was actually inspired to go live. It was very random, very unplanned. I'm actually busy with a lot of personal things, so I haven't even had a chance to even think of a topic that I can discuss on Facebook. And then all of a sudden a topic comes to me. I was picking out an outfit for an occasion. I have, my son's bar mitzvah coming up. And I went to do the try-ons, and as I was sitting there trying on the dress and looking for the outfit, somebody there approached me and asked me what my thoughts were on a show that just came out. Now, I really didn't have a chance to look at any new shows. I have seen yesterday my friends sending me some clips and asking me to look at it. It's something very interesting that just came out. But I didn't even have a chance to really look at it. And when I was trying on my dress and this topic came up, the people there were telling me a little bit about what the show is and the questions that were there, and they sent me the link. And they asked me to go live and answer the questions that were posed on the show to see what my answers would be. They thought it was just going to be a fun episode, a fun live. So I said, well, let me watch this show. I didn't realize it was going to be 2 hours long. Let me see what it's about. And if I have enough interest, I would like to, why not? I'll go live and I will share my opinion. First, I want to say that I am, if you're wondering, what's the name of the show that I'm talking about? So I hope I get this right. This show is called, I believe, Sladki Stol. I don't know how many episodes came out before the one I just watched. All I know is they sent me the link. I watched the one I was sent. And it's very interesting. It's interesting to see a group of young adults, very intelligent ones, I must say, very smart, educated, very intelligent young adults sitting together at a round table. There are questions that are being posed, and there's a group. There's a religious and versus a not religious, traditional, modern group, and they all give their opinions on different topics and questions. So I watched it. As I was watching it, it's almost like I wanted to be a part of that roundtable, because a part of me wanted to, give my, I want to argue your point and I want to say something different, but, because we love to share opinions, right? And it's that type of show, like you're going to be listening to the two sides, and it's almost like you want to talk through the screen and laugh. It's very entertaining. So I have to say kudos to the person, the people. I believe her name is Sarah, to the organizer of the show. I'm very impressed that our youth, that our young adults are brave enough to come out and, share their thoughts and their opinions. It's impressive to see us as a Bukharian community growing, advancing, producing. It's fun. I actually watched the show together with my daughter, and she was very interested. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. I am actually happy that my daughter would be watching something pertinent to our culture, religion, mindset. Yes, sometimes the mindsets are different. And it's interesting because we all are entitled to our own opinions and our own experiences. So that's a little bit of a background behind the show. Now, I wrote the questions down, and I want to share my answers. Not that anybody really cares, but I haven't done a live in a while, and I really think that this is fun. I enjoy personally listening to their answers, and I want to share my answers to some of the questions that were posed, and also to kind of question some of the answers that I heard during the show, because it was very interesting. So the first question is, I used to be religious. It's not really a question, it was a statement. I used to be religious. So the way I would say is, I used to be religious, I still am religious. And over the years of me growing up, there's one thing that I realized about this word religion. There are people who are religious, there are people who are observant, there are people who are not religious. It's not a common denominator. Like, we put religion in an umbrella. We feel like if you're religious, you're supposed to have A, B, C, D code of conduct. And if you're not religious, you're supposed to be a certain other way. There are some things that are acceptable and allowed if you consider yourself to be religious. And then there are some things that are not acceptable and not allowed if you're not. It's like there's no real definition of religion. I realized growing up that there are some people who are simply not religious, not because they choose not to be religious or they don't love God or they don't have a fear of God. It's because they were never given that opportunity. They were raised in a family that never put them into a yeshiva, for example. They never had the opportunity to keep Shabbat because their family didn't practice Shabbat. They never had the opportunity to see what Shabbat even is. They were never given that chance. So to classify and categorize somebody as being religious or not religious based on their upbringing, I would say it's not a fair classification. And then there are some people who consider themselves to be religious, and it's almost like, are they really religious? What is religion, and who can really call themselves religious? Like, there are some of us, even myself included, that we say we are religious, but religion doesn't mean that just because someone considers themselves to be religious, everything about them is being a role model. Everything about them is being perfect. We are all on our own level of observance. We are all on our own level of being closer to our Creator, to God. We are all on our level of growing. There is nobody that can say they are, religious or not religious, because if you consider yourself to be religious, but then again, there are things that we all do wrong: lie, steal, deceive, do things that are wrong, then are you really religious? And then there's the other way around. You're not religious, but your level of connection with the one above may be so much stronger than people that are religious. Or your level of, making sure you're so stringent about never lying or never gossiping may be so much stronger than those who are religious, for example. So I'm not even sure I like to categorize people as saying, I am religious. Okay? That doesn't make you a perfect person. I am not religious. That doesn't make it okay for you to think you can do certain things, for you to think you can break laws because you are not religious. So it's okay to, go outside of the culture and, do everything that God himself, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, God, there is a God in the world and there's a creator and there is a certain level of conduct ethically and morally that we're obligated to be under. So nobody should use those titles, that's my opinion, of course, to defend themselves in what they do or what they don't do. So I used to be religious. So if I were to answer this question, I'm still religious, but I don't think I'm perfect by any means. I don't think that I can consider myself to be a role model, because a role model is somebody who people can look up to in every aspect. And it's very hard to ever say somebody is a real role model, because are we really perfect? I can't say that I am. I love Shabbat. That was the other part of the question in this show. I love Shabbat. As somebody who keeps Shabbat, I have to say that there is nothing that I value more in my life than the gift of having Shabbat. And it's very hard, because when you talk to people who don't have Shabbat, a lot of the times what I've realized in talking to friends who don't keep Shabbat is the fear that keeping Shabbat means we're secluded from work. Well, how are we going to pay the bills? The busiest day of the week is Shabbat for some people. Well, what am I going to do for so many hours of the day? I have nobody to keep Shabbat with. Well, how can I not turn on the lights if I need the lights? So the fear of being restricted and, having this code of law, fear, it makes people afraid of keeping Shabbat. But for those of you that have experienced Shabbat and the beauty behind it, realize that there is nothing more special, more valuable, and more precious than that day of rest called Shabbat. And the reason I say this is because every single day of the week, we are busy running. Morning to night, the phone calls, the social media, the work, the bills, everybody's running around and running errands, and we don't even have a time to sit down and spend time with our children, like all week long. How many of us, especially people, men, for example, who are working, they come home very late at night, do they really have the opportunity to see their children before their children go to bed? Most of us can say that they are guilty of not being able to make that time where they can disconnect completely from the world and focus entirely on their family. Comes Shabbat, the day of rest, and we are giving this beautiful gift where we completely disconnect ourselves from the entire world. There is no social media. There is no, scrolling and seeing what did anybody post, what happened right now, what is the news showing, who died, who's alive, whose birthday is it. There is nothing besides you and your family. You don't care about what happens at work because work is done. There is no work. Whatever was on your head, all those stressors, they have the ability to be in the back burner. Today is the day of rest. And I personally think that we are so blessed to have this day called Shabbat. And therefore, if I were to answer this, do I love Shabbat? I love it, and I'm so grateful to the one above for giving us the ability to have Shabbat. The next question, I'm trying to get to the good one very, very soon, okay? The next question is, I value starting my family at a young age. Now, this is going to be, when I was watching the show, I realized one thing, and now again, I'm not trying to be biased, I'm not trying to criticize, I'm not trying to put my own 2 cents in, but one thing I realized is when we have a show and we talk about topics pertaining to marriage, for example, I probably think I would love to see married people on the show talking about marriage. And the reason I say that is because unless you're married and you have a certain experience in a certain topic, it's really hard to answer that question, to say whether or not you agree to something or disagree to something, whether or not it's good or bad. So when I was watching the show and I was listening to some of the answers, it was amazing. I loved it. It was very entertaining. But here I am on the other end, and I'm listening to this question. I value starting family at a young age. Someone like me will tell you, starting a family at a young age, I actually discussed this before many years, I think when I just started being on Facebook. I actually got engaged very, very young. I got engaged at age 16. And I got married at age 17. What are my thoughts about starting a family at a very young age? If I had my daughter start at a very young age, would I be for it or would I be against it? The way I answer this is as follows. There is nothing, let me rephrase that. I think starting a family is not necessarily based on age. Starting a family is based on mental status. If you are 30 years old, financially stable, you bought yourself your first house, you graduated with a degree, you are all set and prepared. But you have absolutely no emotional intelligence. Maturity level is at 15 going on 30. The question is, does that make you more prepared in being married? Now, let's say we flip the coin and we say we have an 18-year-old who doesn't have an education, is very mature, but doesn't even know what marriage really is. They're mature, but they're not really ready for the challenges of marriage, for the toughness and the hardships that come with being committed to someone else, with being a parent, because shortly after getting married, we become a parent. Does that make you ready? So if we take statistics and we decide what is the normal age, probably there is no real answer to what is the real normal age of getting married. There are people who get married at 18 and they're living happily married. There are people who get married at 18 and they are miserable and there's a high level of divorce. And then there are people that get married at 27 and they're married very happily. And those that get married at 30 and they are also miserably and get divorced. I think starting a family is very much dependent on a person's maturity level. In what sense? Expectations. I think the generation of people right now who are getting married, they are losing what expectations are expected of them and their partners. They are losing what it means to be committed, to be in a relationship. They're losing the sense of, it's not a picnic. Life is not a picnic. It's not of, let me get married and things are going to be so amazing. It's going to be this happily ever after relationship where I'm going to go on vacation all the time. And my husband is going to open the door to me every time I come in the car because he did that when I was dating him. Or my wife, she's going to look gorgeous every time I walk in the house because look at how she is when we're dating. She's always on point. She'll always look so beautiful. And I look at her figure. She has such a nice body. If you get married with those expectations, then whatever age you are at, that means you are not ready, period, point blank. So age, to me, is not a classification of getting married. Should you be financially stable? I think, yes. You should be financially stable. But does that mean if you're not financially stable, you don't have a chance to get married? What happens if you're so financially stable that tomorrow, in a blink of an eye, your entire business crashes and goes down the drain? Does that jeopardize your marriage? So if somebody gets married to somebody who is financially stable for the mere intention of he's so rich, she's a doctor, he's a lawyer, and then they get married and something happens in their career where it goes down the drain, and that was one of the reasons they got married, for the status of the other person, I personally think the foundation of that marriage is going to be shaky. And then there are people who get married who had no education, who had no degrees. They struggled in the beginning. Not that I'm saying it's a good thing. Not that I'm saying that's the way it should be. I don't think it should be that way. But life sometimes hits us unexpectedly and things happen. And that should not be a deal breaker. You get introduced to somebody who's a very good candidate. And people sometimes make a mistake and they say, my daughter is not ready. My son is not ready. Well, what is the classification of being ready? Sometimes when a couple starts at a very young age and they together make it through and accomplish something, they together will appreciate what it took for them to get to where they are today. But if somebody, and this is again my opinion, because again, I watch the show, I want to share my thought processes. But if they come into a marriage with somebody who has everything built already for them, the guy already has a house, the girl already has an education, Everything is already built. What is going to hold you together when you have challenges and hardships? In a way, you're going to think to yourself, well, what did you do for me? I did this without you. I can continue doing a lot of things without you. Well, why should I have to keep supporting the family? I'm independent. I don't need you in my life. I could support you whether you're in it or you're not in it. So there are pros and cons to every situation, which is why I say, if the people getting married are at marital age, but their mentality is not at all prepared for what marriage really is, then they are in very deep trouble. Because, unfortunately, watching these shows and watching the youth and the amount of phone calls I get, people asking me, well, do you do shidduchim? Do you hook people up? Which I really don't do. But then I see people who are struggling to get married, and I'm thinking to myself, but why are people really struggling to get married? There are so many single girls out there. There are so many single guys out there. Wouldn't it be ideal that they would see each other, fall in love, go out, have something in common, and get married? And the answer is no, it's not that way. It's not apparently the way things are going right now for the young generation. And I think part of the problem is that we are raising children and we are instilling in the children the wrong fundamentals and the wrong foundations. My opinion, this is my opinion, I don't think if we teach our children what's important before you get married, it's important to have a career, it's important to be financially independent, very important. But we don't educate our children in knowing, do you know that your husband is not always going to give you a gift on your anniversary? He's not always going to take you on that very fancy, expensive restaurant. He's not going to take you on vacation every year just because right now when it comes to your dating phase, he's promising you, gold and silver. And your wife is not always going to have that size 2 body. There are going to be times when she's going to give birth and life hits. And you have children, and she's going to be very moody, and she's going to go through a certain phase. We need to prepare our children from a young age what life really is and what is very important. And I have a feeling that we're living in a society and culture that all I personally hear about that is being valued amongst the youth, amongst the young generation right now, is the importance of making money, is the importance of building something, business mind. How do I make more money? How do I build a second house and a third house and a second business and a third business? And I say this because I too have young children. I have boys who are teenagers, and I hear their mindset. And I quickly try to steer them away because we are living a very materialistic life. We are running after physical things, but that is not going to give us long-lasting happiness. We have to keep instilling in the youth what it means to be patient, what it means not to expect things, what it means that there is no differentiation of, if I'm a woman, I have to be the one to always cook and always clean. And if I'm a man, I have to be the one to always provide and always work and always hustle. There is such a thing as we sometimes have to change roles. If our husband doesn't have a job today, does that make him a no good for nothing? Is he a piece of garbage now? Well, maybe life is not giving him the green light today. Maybe right now, in this stage in my life, I as a lady have to be the one to earn. I as a lady have to be the one to pitch in. Or what if my wife is in school or she's hustling and she's working and her schedule doesn't permit for her to be able to cook and clean all the time. So just because I'm a man, I can't cook sometimes, I can't clean sometimes, I can't pitch in sometimes. If we're going to have these, gender biases, or we're raising our children in certain type of mindsets, then when they get together and they get married, things will happen and they will not know how to deal with those things. Because as we get older, Our patience levels are not the same. Some of us get wiser. Unfortunately, some of us don't get so wise. So the way I would answer, I value starting family at a young age. My answer to this question is absolutely. I value starting family at a young age. I feel like if you're older, that doesn't mean you're wiser. That doesn't mean you're smarter. Your financial success does not guarantee a happy marriage. Happiness is not equivalent to how much money you earn. And if happiness means you have to earn a certain amount of money in order to afford a certain lifestyle, that marriage is going to be shaky. Because the minute we're no longer able to earn that amount of money, there are going to be controversies and problems in the marriage. The next question, which I found to be very interesting, how would I answer this question? Saving yourself before marriage is important. I was actually curious because the show, the way they titled it, and again, kudos to the producers, I loved it. That's why you inspired me to do this live today. It says, is it okay to have multiple partners before marriage? That was the title. But then the question they posed was, saving yourself before marriage is important. Back to the producers of the show, and again, I'm not here to discuss the show, bash it, or say not at all, but because I was watching it, and I'm only here because it motivated to come on, what I thought was interesting, how do we answer this question with people who are not yet married? Once again, back to what I said before. We're saying there is a debate. Some people are on the side of, is it okay to lose your virginity before marriage, or is it not okay? And the people who are answering, let's say that it's okay, they're not yet married. They haven't really started a family. So I kind of was feeling a certain way about that particular question, only because I would like to hear this from somebody who is married and could tell me or the viewers, is it okay not to save yourself before marriage? Is it okay not to have one partner before marriage? And then give me their opinion and say that I am very happily married. Again, there are those of you who are watching and thinking, well, yeah, I feel, not me, whoever's watching and thinking, I lost my virginity and I'm very happily married. Or there are those that may think, of course, I've had multiple partners and I'm very happily married. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying that that it's a deal breaker for everybody. What I'm saying is I'm very curious as to how can we get an answer to such a question from somebody who is not yet married, stating whether or not it's okay. And the reason why I feel this way is because I have a different opinion about this. My opinion, saving yourself before marriage is important or not? I would say it is absolutely important. Now, I'm not answering that question because I'm religious and I want to give a religious answer because that's the right answer. That's not the reason why I'm saying that that's my answer. I'm answering it that way simply because that is strongly my fundamental opinion on this particular question. Now, we're not talking about people who slipped accidentally, who had another marriage before and got divorced. We're not talking about those type of people. We're talking about, let's say, my way of answering. I'm answering right now the question specifically for, let's say, somebody who is in their 19, 18, 20, 21, that age group, okay? That's specifically my mindset right now. Not that I'm saying my answer would be different if you're not 19, 20, if you're 30. There's just, I don't want you attacking me for my answer. So let's let me narrow it down to the youthful group, to the people who are 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, younger population. Because the reason I'm narrowing it down is because there are people who watch this show or any show or who talk amongst their friends, and they think that certain things are okay and certain things are not okay. See, when I was growing up, because I consider myself to be a Bukharian, and the culture and the representation and the values that my grandparents instilled in me, I value my body, and I value what losing virginity or having sexual intimacy is. And I don't think it's fair to say that it should be a one-way street, that if you're a girl, you're supposed to have XYZ principles, and if you're a guy, then the principles change for you because you're a man, and just because you're a man, it's acceptable for you to do what you're not supposed to do. And if you're a girl, then if you do the same thing, then you have, titles and you have names, and you're bad and you're trash. So let's say that that's not fair. It's really not fair to make it okay for a guy and not make it okay for a girl. I think universally, my answer to this question would be, I strongly believe that a person should really save their virginity or themselves for the people they're going to marry. And the reason I feel that way, what are my thoughts on this topic? And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to pretend I'm some expert. This show right now is my opinion. It's just because they asked me, whoever I spoke to, come on, let's hear your thoughts. So I'm here. I think it's fun and it's exciting. This is my opinion. I personally think that this particular deed of intimacy is a special connection, is a special oneness between a husband and a wife. When we start to go out of the box and think that it's okay to experiment, to have fun, to enjoy life, and then, when we're ready to settle down, to commit ourselves to that one person, then life begins. I don't really agree with that topic. And mainly the reason I don't agree with that topic, and again, I cannot say that I've been on the other side of the road. I can't tell you that I haven't had relationships at all before marriage. So I can't tell you that my answer is going to be for everybody, because some of you watching are going to say it's not true. I have done those things and it's not true. What you're saying doesn't make sense. You may be right. My opinion still is going to exist. If you had another relationship before marriage, I feel that you're putting yourself at risk, because it gives you the opportunity to compare, to expect, to feel, to understand what someone else already feels like, acts like, has been through. So why should you appreciate your spouse when maybe you've experienced something that was better or different? So I feel like this is a very big danger. It's a very big danger. If a guy feels that there is nothing wrong with going out there and having fun, and what's not going to affect their marriage, I strongly feel that that is 100% wrong. It's not the right mentality. And we shouldn't, as youth, I'm talking to the youth right now, feel that it's okay to not save yourself before marriage, and it's okay to have multiple partners and fool around before marriage. It's not okay. And we as ladies, especially the ladies who are listening, just like Marina said very nicely, there is a modesty component involved. Our body is sacred. It's holy. It gives us the dignity and the ability to, we just like we take a diamond and we put it into a safe box and we keep it so that it doesn't get lost And we want to make sure it doesn't get stolen. Our body is more than a diamond. We have to protect it. We have to keep it holy. We have to sanctify it. We have to make sure that we don't lose it to those other people who are not our significant other. Because when we get married, and we get married to the guy of our dreams, and they find out that we've been outside of the box, sometimes that too diminishes our own, sometimes that diminishes. Like I'll give you an example. There was a girl who called me one time, and she told me that she was getting married to somebody, and she strongly believed that she's going to get married to this guy. And she ends up having, a relationship with him, and losing her womanhood to him. Shortly after, that guy drops her. The engagement is called off. They're not getting married. Now she's dating someone else. The other guy is asking her, did she ever have any relationship with anybody else? How will she answer this question if she knows that if the answer is going to be yes, that will either be a deal breaker, or she's going to feel that it's going to make her look belittled, which it shouldn't, but by accident, belittled in front of this new candidate that she's going out with. So my point is, if you think it's not so bad, and we have a guarantee, and we're getting married, and there's nothing wrong with it, think again. I personally strongly feel that we should save ourselves, whether you're a guy or a girl, strictly for the one you're planning to get married to. It's a holy thing. It's actually an act of, as they say, like, God loves when a husband and wife are together. And it's something that's so pure and that's so holy and so special that by accident, this whole outside culture and the movies we watch and all the advertisements and everything, they have made it into something so trashy and so cheap. And it's very sad and very unfortunate. And I really strongly feel and hope that the generation that's growing right now is not going to take it so lightly and feel that there's even that option. Should I save myself before marriage? It's sad. That's really an option? I didn't even think that was an option, getting married and growing up. I didn't even think that it should even be a question. Really? Is it something that we should even for a second think like, yeah, of course that's okay? No, it shouldn't be okay. There shouldn't be a way to justify this. Things happen by accident, maybe, but to lose ourselves and to have multiple partners and then to get married and to even think, well, what's wrong with that? There is a lot wrong with this. And I really think that we need to educate our children that we should be very modest, because if we educate our children in modesty, it definitely will help them from getting themselves into trouble. And finally, I think the last question that was here was, the Torah guides me in problems I face in my relationships and my life. How would I answer this question? I will personally say, from somebody who is observant, right? I don't want to use the word religious, observant. I definitely feel that the Torah has definitely guided me in my life and my relationships so many times. Because think about it. If I'm dealing with a challenge, right? Whether it's a financial challenge or a challenge in raising children or a challenge in Shalom Bayit, because we all go through it. I mean, if you've never had a marital issue, then there's a question of marriage there, because every perfect marriage is going to have ups and is going to have downs. There's going to be miserable days. There's going to be exciting days. Parenting, there are going to be children that are going to be angels, and you're going to be like, really, I can have 50 of these children. And then there's going to be children that if you had this one child from the beginning, maybe you would reconsider having 4 more children. It's going to be like, it's challenging. I mean, life throws things at you that are unexpected. So we all have those moments where we feel like we're going to crash. And then we go to our faith. So in this topic, it's the Torah, right? Our faith, our nationality, our religion. And then we know that there's Hashem in the world and there's a God in the world. And He's the one to turn to. He's the one to cry to. He's the one that can make anything happen. Even the things that are unexpected, that you would never think would be possible. God comes through and boom, there's a solution. Your husband, which didn't have a job, for example, all of a sudden Hashem gives him a job because you cried out to Him and you prayed for him. And Hashem allows you to have the patience and the love that you would have for the child, which may be sucking your blood out of you and draining you. So when you come and turn to the code and to the book and to God Himself of Torah that allows us to have this, it's like you have a driver manual. So you have a manual of life. It teaches you how to respect your husband, how to respect your wife, how to honor your parents, how to value your children. When you have that book, that code, that observance, that religion to turn to, I feel like you're no longer taking everything into your own hands and thinking you're supposed to find the answer to everything. You turn to the Torah, you turn to the religion, you turn to God, and all of a sudden things that were impossible, they become possible. So I definitely would say that the Torah helped me in many ways to overcome my challenges. I think Rosa had a very interesting question. Hi, Rosa, by the way. How are you? What about the topic of intermarriage? I see a lot of those lately. They convert them. Correct conversion is a long process and think that's okay to do. You actually reminded me. I think that was one of the questions also on the show. Would you marry somebody out of your religion? Now, again, okay, can you hear me? If you can hear me, I might have pressed mute by accident. Just put a like if you hear me. Can you hear me? I think I pressed mute, but I unmuted it, I believe. But if you can hear me, let me see you put the likes so I know that you hear me. I'm not sure if you hear me, but what about the topic of intermarriage? Thank you, Marina. So Marina is the only one here that's maybe hearing me. Rosa, yes, we can hear you. Okay, very good. You know, this question was also posed, I think also part of the show. And again, I keep referring back to the show. I actually loved it. I thought it was amazing. So, and I heard the answers and I thought that those were very interesting answers. The way I would answer, would you marry outside of the religion? So it's not, you see, this is where we kind of like think it's okay versus it's not okay. It's not it's okay versus it's not okay. When we start thinking that we can do whatever we want to do. When my children, you know, sometimes when I talk to my children and I ask them, let's say I'm going to throw something out there. Is it okay to steal? Or is it okay to lie? Or is it okay to whatever? And they give me a smart answer. Like one time, one of my children said, well, if it exists in the world, then it's okay. Then why would it exist in the world? And I said, that's a great answer. But a lot of things exist in the world that doesn't make it right. If we decide, for example, that we're driving a car and there's a stop sign and we choose not to stop at the stop sign because we simply choose we don't want to stop. So what happens? We cross the stop sign. Either we get pulled over by the police and we get points and we have to pay a fine, or we even get into a car accident, or nothing happens to us. So we were able to pass the stop sign and nothing happened to us. So we think we could pass a red light next time. And we think next time we can go and disobey another rule because nothing happens to us. So yes, the answer is some people will live their life and do whatever they want to do because why not? It's their life. It's freedom of choice. And yes, that's the mindset. And again, who am I to question you? But if you're going to really think about it and the aspect of observance and religion, of what am I, who am I, why am I in this world, and to a certain degree, I'm held to certain standards. And one of those standards are, I am supposed to marry people from my own religion. It's not something optional. Again, we can choose to break any rule. We're not telling anybody what to do. But if we're talking about real, rules as far as our religion is concerned, we're not talking about those that want to keep it or those that don't want to keep it. We're supposed to marry somebody part of our religion and our nationality. And the reason behind it is, especially if it's a woman, if she's not Jewish, that means your entire generations, family tree, roots are going to be non-Jews. And that becomes troublesome, especially as they get older and we lose the family lineage. And then other people are supposed to get married to those people whose mothers weren't Jewish, but from 3 generations ago, we lost that whole family lineage because, by then it got so mixed up because now, everybody's keeping Shabbat and religion and they think they're Torah observance to a degree. And we are now marrying somebody who's not even Jewish. So now we, by accident, are going to have not Jewish kids. So it's not just a matter of choice like, oh, I choose to marry a Jew or I choose to marry a non-Jew. You are actually eradicating the Jewish religion altogether. Because of your choices, other people who are going to tomorrow get married to your children, they too are going to have non-Jewish kids by accident. So it's not so simple like we think it is. It's not a matter of preference and choice. This is a serious problem. This is a very serious problem. Now I saw, there is another way of answering this question in which somebody would say, well, what happens if the lady is Jewish, but the guy is not Jewish and the kids are still going to be Jewish? And I'm going to say this example, okay? And again, it's not because I'm bashing not Jewish people. I have nothing against not Jewish people. I feel like there are amazing non-Jews, and just because you're born into a certain religion doesn't make you good or bad. But we're talking about it from a religious standpoint, from the Jewish standpoint. So do not take offense in what I'm saying to you. If you're choosing and saying, well, he's not Jewish, but she's Jewish, does that make it okay? It doesn't make it okay. Because if you're going to take something, like if you're going to go buy a wig, for example, are you going to take 50% synthetic and 50% authentic hair? Or would you want 100% human virgin hair? If you're going to buy a Lamborghini, a very expensive car, are you going to put in it a motor from a Ford company? Not that Ford is a bad car. It drives perfectly well. It's an amazing car. But does it cost as much as a Lamborghini? It does not. So you have to understand when you're talking about mixing things, we're not saying one is better or one is worse. We have to just say that there are times when we are mixing and it's okay to mix. You can mix sugar and salt in some salads. It's going to taste amazing. That's supposed to be blended that way. It's supposed to be that way. But you cannot mix religions, not because we want to or we don't want to. It's a rule. God doesn't want it to happen. So we cannot go against God. We cannot go against what God prohibits us to do because we are risking and eradicating future generations. So I really hope, and again, it's not to offend anybody, and I'm sorry if my examples were off. Again, I have nothing against any religion, but it was definitely a topic and a question that was posed, and I really thought that it's a very important topic to address, and I really don't know if we have enough awareness, and I don't even blame those that do it. I don't blame and say that, sometimes it's not that people want to do it because they want to rebel or they want to, go against. I just think there's not enough awareness. There's not enough education. Maybe as a community, we should put more awareness and education into understanding why some things are prohibited. Because if we understand why things are not supposed to be done, then maybe it's going to be easier not to do it because we all of a sudden understand it better. So, again, I appreciate all of you for joining me tonight. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, please feel free to ask. And until next time, have a good night.